Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm playing Drawfish, an engine that plays whatever move brings the evaluation bar closest to 0.00. A big thank you to YaPanda for leaving a comment with this idea. My goal is to win one game, I think. Let's get started with game number one. Alright, game number one, I've given myself the white pieces to have the best possible chance of entering a position that I'm actually familiar with. But what I really have to do is come up with some species of strategy, because I normally come into these videos with some idea of what's going on, but this time I really don't. Okay, we're met with pawn to e6, and the question is, what exactly am I looking for here? Because I could just play a totally normal London system, which is what I always play, and I can be pretty confident that it's not going to challenge me in any specific manner, because it's looking to keep the position as equal as possible, so it's not going to play something crazy like c5, queen b6, and then take a pawn, because even if that gave it advantage, it wouldn't want the advantage, it would just want to keep everything as close to equal as possible. But the real question is, how do I take advantage of that? And I'm not really sure. Okay, we're met with knight to f6, and I have had a little bit of an idea. I need to find a move where I get a kind of advantage where Stockfish would be winning by too much if it took back, if that makes any sense. So for instance, in this position right here, if I take on c7, I only win 1 point of material. So let's say the evaluation is +2 in favor of white. However, if Stockfish were to take back, maybe then, because I lose an entire bishop, the evaluation would be -3 or more for black, in which case it would actually not want to recapture me. And maybe it would want to, I don't know, move the queen out of the way. In which case I would just have a free pawn, and I would also have a surefire way to continuously get an advantage against this bot. However, the problem is for the rest of the game, it's going to constantly look for ways to equalize again, which might include some species of counterplay. Let's give that a try. I think what I'm weighing here is, were I to take queen to e7, I think the evaluation would be, let's say, maybe +2 for white, maybe +2.5. But if I were to capture and black takes back, I think it would be more than -3 in black's favor. So I think I can actually take this. Ooh, okay. We're met with bishop to b4 check. I didn't even think of this, but I guess this is a pretty neutral move. Now the question is, why can't I just play c3 and be attacking? Oh, I mean, I would be attacking the queen and the bishop, but then, okay, this makes a lot of sense. If I play c3, I'm attacking its bishop, but it can now take my bishop, because even if I take back, then we're just back to equal. I mean, I still have my pawn advantage, but nothing huge has happened there in the position. Wow, that's extremely amusing, and the thing is, I don't think I have any other choice. Unless, wait, can I play queen to d2 here? Using the same principle as before, that were Stockfish to take, it would give it too much of an advantage. So it wouldn't want to take, it would want to play something more equal. Say, I don't know, maybe queen to e7, and then, what do I play there? Like c3? I mean, I would still only walk away with my pawn advantage, but I think I'd be pretty happy with that. Okay, let's try queen to d2. Okay, the engine has elected to take on c7, which in hindsight makes a lot of sense. Actually, c3 might have been better. I didn't want to play this originally because it would double my pawns, but the problem is now if I take on b4, I'm assuming the engine can probably just take on c2, and we'd both still be in a pretty equal position, which unfortunately is not something that I want against this engine. But okay, I do kind of have to take this bishop anyways. Okay, we're met with queen takes c2, which was very much expected, and I'm going to kind of conclude that that little sequence of shenanigans didn't really work out in my favor. I do still think the concept is sound though. I just have to refine it a little bit so that it doesn't have a choice, right? It doesn't have a way to evade my, advantage gain. The other thing I could do is I could kind of just play whatever until we simplify enough pieces that we get into a king endgame. But the problem is I would still need at least one piece on the board so I can play something crazy. But the thing is, in this early stage of the game, an extra pawn isn't going to make much of a difference because Stockfish is going to have plenty of time to find some crazy shenanigans that in my wildest dreams, like this one, I would never even begin to calculate. But in an endgame of, say, a bunch of pawns, 2 kings, and maybe 2 knights, or 2 bishops or something, that is 1 minor piece for each side, I can play something like, I don't know, knight takes a pawn, and the engine probably wouldn't be able to take back without getting too much advantage, I think. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just play random moves until we've simplified the position enough that actually taking something as small as a pawn does make a big difference, which again would only happen in the endgame. So I'm just going to try and force trades for the next 10-15 moves. Okay, we've managed to get the queens and a pair of minor pieces off of the board, and the funny thing is I think I can actually continue to force crazy trades by playing wackadoodle stuff like knight to d5, because Stockfish can probably never retake without getting too much of an advantage. There's probably other moves that sort of keep equality much better. So I think here I can just play knight to d5 and almost guarantee a trade on the next turn. Right, and we are in fact met with some random rook move that I guess lines up against these doubled pawns, but I can simply take the knight and successfully land another trade. Now we're getting pretty close to what I wanted to achieve, which is a pair of minor pieces facing off against each other in such a way that when I play something crazy like, I don't know, knight to e5 and then take a free pawn, that pawn advantage actually makes sufficient difference that I can, I don't know, promote a pawn or something of that nature. So I think the next step is bring my king up, take over the open file, look for a whole bunch of trades. Again, Stockfish will meet me sort of face to face because it can't let me get too much of an advantage. It thinks that, or rather it wants to achieve 0-0. So if I do something crazy like double up my rooks on the c file and try to go for c7, attack the bishop, attack d7, it's going to realize that I'm gaining advantage, and it's going to come and try and trade off rooks, which is, again, what I want to do in the first place. Okay, beautiful. Stockfish has volunteered another exchange of pieces. It's not exactly what I was hoping for because the knight versus the bishop would be a very nice sort of asymmetry to have in the position, so it would be more easy to take advantage of that difference. But okay, we'll go ahead and take back, and I think the goal now is to just keep one of the rooks on the board. Also, we're threatening a6, which is quite nice. Okay, it does capture my pawn on b3, which I'm a little taken aback by. I thought that would give it too much advantage, but I suppose I can just take on a6, and it's probably calculating takes on b2. I move my king out of the way. Actually, it would just take on f2, but I guess it wouldn't, right? Because it's looking to go 0-0, so it's never going to take advantage of a position. If it played this, I don't need to be scared of it, because that just means that's what it thinks is closest to equal. Okay, met with rook f to b8. I think I can just take on a7. I still haven't achieved a rook trade, which is kind of what I should be looking for. I could have also risked it for the biscuit there and just played something crazy like quote-unquote forking the rooks, but I think I'd rather just grab this extra pawn first. Okay, we're met with pawn to d5, getting this weakness off the 7th rank, and now I wonder, can I play rook to b7? Oh, I suppose it would just take anyways, because this rook defends this rook via x-ray. That's to say, if I play rook b7, rook takes, I can take this rook, but then this rook would just take back, and then we have a very, very even-steven endgame. However, we would achieve what I was looking for in the first place, which is one piece, that is one major piece in this case, one rook versus another rook, and then maybe I can do something crazy like sacrifice my rook, and it either has to A, take a rook, which would immediately give it a +5 advantage, which would be diabolical, or it would have to just like move the king out of the way and let me take a free pawn, which hopefully, maybe if it's like an outside pass pawn, maybe I can convert that advantage against this engine. So let's go for rook b7. Oh, beautiful. Okay, we're met with king to f8, which is like an absolute godsend. Now I think I'm just going to take the back rank rook because we still have this b2 pawn, so I'm pretty confident that if I just hold on to this b2 pawn, say with my king, and then maybe bring this rook over, I'll have two outside passed pawns. And I know that it's an engine, and I know that it's trying to equalize, but it's never going to try and beat me. It's only ever going to try and drag things back to 0-0, so maybe this will be enough advantage to take this home. Okay, we are in fact met with the recapture. I'd assume I just slide the king over and hold on to this pawn. The other thing I could do, wait a second, I could play something like rook g1. Problem is, I think there it would probably be very equal for it to take on b2. The reason rook g1 is interesting is because of rook to g8, and then either it takes my rook immediately, which of course would immediately make it like -5 or -6 in favor of black, or it would have to move the king out of the way and allow me to take the rook. And then no matter what the engine does, it could play like perfect Stockfish for the rest of the game, and it would never be able to beat me. However, I do think that it's just going to take on b2 if I play rook g1. So let's go king c2 and defend the pawn first. Okay, we're met with king to e7. This is quite exciting because I really do think that now I just maybe start to advance this pawn. I should also bring my rook to the open file though, and then eventually there has to be a position where it's going to be playing to draw the game, and I'm going to play something crazy that forces it. Let's say it plays rook to b7. I could play rook to a7, and either it allows me to take this rook for free because it's pinned to the king, or it takes on a7 itself, in which case, honestly, it's going to try and play for equalization anyways, so I don't think I should be too afraid of that. Okay, we're met with rook to g8. e8. Now, why is this not really good for me, or am I crazy? Because I can play check. If the king goes anywhere on the back rank, you know, presumably king to f8, then I can give check. King moves up, I take, it takes, and then I just have a passed pawn. That has to be winning for me. There's no way. So I'm assuming rook to a7 would lead to king to d6, check, and then I guess it could just keep crawling back, but then I give another check, and then I take on f7. Actually, I could just give this first check, and if king to d6, I just take. Rook to g2, I'm assuming is the idea. I take, it takes with check, I move the king up, it takes. Oh, I can actually see that being equal. But I do need to challenge the engine in some way. Can I just play b4? I don't know. I'm gonna start with this check though. Okay, we are in fact met with king d6, so I'm assuming that it's already calculating that if I take on f7, rook g2 is probably a draw. And I don't think I want to simplify all that. I think I might have to commit to the bit here in just a sec. Can I play something crazy like this? Because if it's calculating that this position is a draw, by playing rook to d7, it definitely can't take. Because that would be like -5, -6 immediately in favor of black. So it would have to play something like king to c6, which is more moderate. In which case, I think I can just take. Rook g2, I take. It takes on f2 with check, I advance, it takes, and then I take on e6. And I'm not, you know, reinventing the wheel, but I do have an extra pawn there. Whereas if I leave the king on d6, it defends e6. So I'd have to just come and defend this pawn right away instead. I think I can get away with this. Let's try rook to d7 check. Okay, nice. We do in fact get king to c6, so I think I can take on f7 now. And we'll go through the motions of just taking all these pawns. Or no, we won't. Okay, pawn to f5. I really thought I was going to play rook g2. This is a very surprising move, because I now have a 2-pawn advantage, but I'm assuming it just means nothing. I wonder if I can take this anyways, and it would be forced to play like rook g2 or something. Because again, definitely, it has to be more equal to just let me take the pawn than to take back, which again would immediately be like -5, -6 in favor of black. So I think I can take this totally fine. Nice. Okay, and we do in fact get rook to g2. This is huge for me personally, because this is exactly what I was talking about at the beginning of the video when I said that if we achieve an endgame with a whole bunch of pawns and just the kings, and then 2 major or minor pieces, they turned out to be 2 major pieces, 2 rooks, then I can capture pawns willy-nilly, and it can never take me back because it would give it too much of an advantage. And again, it wants to just bring the eval to 0-0. It's not looking for a draw per se, because technically the most effective way to get a draw is to just crush your opponent and then stalemate them. But that's not what this bot is doing. It's just looking to bring the eval as close to 0-0 as possible. So instead of taking my rook, of course, now it's going to play rook g2, and I do think I have a crushing advantage here. I'm just going to take this pawn on h5. I have a 4-pawn advantage, about to be a 3, I guess 2-pawn advantage, but I'll have 2 outside passed pawns, which hopefully I'll be able to convert. Okay, we do get rook takes f2. You'd imagine I just advance the king, or maybe king d3 to hold on to e3. If I play king c3, I hold on to the b2 pawn, which is an outside passed pawn, but if I play king to d3, then I hold on to the center structure, which I'm quite happy about. And honestly, I think I'd rather that. Let's play king to d3 to make sure there is never a chance of counterplay. I have to lose one of these 2 pawns anyways. I actually think I'd rather lose this pawn and still have these 2 pawns to play with on the king side. Oh, beautiful. King to d7. Lord knows why that's more equal than just taking one of these 2 pawns. Not my monkey, not my circus. Or not my circus, not my monkeys. None of my business is my point. None of my beeswax. It elects to play king d7, which apparently it thinks is more drawish. I'm going to play what I think is a very natural move, which is just f4. Because again, I originally wanted to hold on to these pawns, so I'm still totally fine with it taking on b2. Okay, it does in fact take on b2. Now you'd imagine I just push. But actually I'm going to start with rook to h7 check to force this king to sort of hide itself either on the back rank or behind its own pawn structure. I just don't want to give it the tempo of playing king to e7, king to f6, at which point it would be in front of my 2 most, you know, profitable pawns, which hopefully will pay off and become good investments of queens on the back rank. Okay, we are met with king to e8. You'd imagine I just push now. Okay, we're met with rook to h2. Now, my slight concern is that this isn't that trivial. I'm sure it's winning for white, I'm just not sure by how much. Like, I'd feel a lot better if I could somehow grab this pawn. Like, could I just play rook to e7? The question is, because if I take on e6, that's definitely way better for white. So the question is, if I get that pawn, is that going to be like +8 or something? And then if it takes, it's just like -6? That I can't risk. I can't really risk it just taking. I mean, on the bright side, I know that it's never going to play for advantage, but on the downside, it's going to actively play for a draw, which means it is going to have to play, I think, back-to-back best moves, since I'm going to assume this position is better for white. Question is, what do I do about this? If I were a better player, I'd sit here and just calculate, but the problem is I'm not even really sure what I'm trying for in this position because my king is stuck. My king is sort of trapped here. And even though I have its king on the back rank, it wouldn't be necessarily hard for it to walk over. Then again, if it walked over, I could come here and take this pawn, and it can't defend with the rook because it has to keep an eye on this pawn. There's just so much to calculate. I think I might just risk it for the biscuit. I'm going to kick myself in the head if it ends up just taking my rook, but I'm going to bet that it still can't take my rook and that it would be more drawish for it to just move the king out of the way and leave me with just a couple of extra pawns than it would be for it to just capture my rook and have an entire rook advantage. So I'm going to play rook to e7 and give that check. Oh, thank goodness. Okay, that is an absolutely enormous relief. I'm just going to take this pawn. I'm going to assume it's going to like take and then I can play check. And with 3 extra pawns, even though this is Stockfish, again, it's not trying to beat me. It's just trying to play for a draw, so it won't even play for like tricks. Hopefully this is plenty of material for me to just walk down the board and get checkmate. No, why would you do that? Okay, king to d7, which means there's still a pawn on the board. I really could just send it and play rook d6 and just totally commit to the bit. Question is, am I bold enough for this? The truth is it's not that necessary, but if I play something like rook to h6, rook to h3, king e2, or maybe rook to h6, king over, e4 check. This is me attempting to actually calculate something. King e2, it just takes the pawn for free. Should I just commit to the bit? I'm gonna try it. It hasn't failed me yet. I genuinely think it's just such a big disparity that if I play rook d6, if it leaves me alone, then I have a 4-pawn advantage. But if it takes, then it has an entire rook advantage, and these pawns are just about toast anyways. So I think I can still play rook to d6. Okay, that worked out beautifully. Okay, king to e8. I think it actually worked out amazing that it's rooks instead of knights or bishops like I originally intended, because again, taking a rook is just such an enormous advantage, especially in a pawn endgame like this one. So I can just take on d5, guaranteed now. And I should be basically set for the rest of this game. And my goal is very simple. I just need to get my king in between my pawns, march down the middle of the board like a huge battleship, and then eventually either threaten checkmate with the rook on the back rank, since the king will have to hang around and try and stop these pawns, or the king will move out of the way and I'll just promote. Okay, met with king to e7. Maybe we change the plan just a tiny bit. I'm going to defend this pawn because if it's going to leave me an extra outside pass pawn, I'm not going to turn it down because it doesn't change my plan whatsoever. I'm still going to march the king towards the middle, push until the king goes all the way to the back rank, at which point, again, because there's pawns and kings on the 6th, the king is basically almost getting checkmated, in which case I'm threatening the same idea just on the king side of the board instead of the queen side. And by doing so, I get the added benefit of just holding on to the h4 pawn, which is a free passed pawn. So I'm going to play this out, just march down the middle of the board. Okay, as you can see, this has worked out extremely well. The king has in fact elected to escape, which makes a lot of sense. Stockfish will usually play for whatever line extends the game for as long as possible. It's not actually playing for chances to maybe trick the opponent and like win a pawn or something. It's not going to play human chess like that. It's just going to try and get checkmated in as few moves as possible. And again, this was a completely winning endgame 10 moves ago, and it still is. So it's just playing to avoid checkmate at this point. Let's advance this pawn. We're threatening to promote to a queen. If it comes and stops this pawn, then we just advance a different pawn. And again, we're just overwhelming its position. It should be mate in just a couple more moves. Nice. With that, we do in fact promote the pawn, get rid of its rook. This is just completely game over. And actually, there's a very beautiful checkmate here. I can play king to f7. Concept being that if king to h8, I just immediately have mate. So king to h6 has to be the best move in this position, which I'm assuming it's going to play. And there it is, in fact, on the board, but the king can't run any further, and I don't really want to move any of these pieces. So I can just make any old waiting move, and the only legal move on the board is king to h7. We do, in fact, get king to h7, and now we're right back where I wanted to be in the first place, with rook to h5, checkmate. With that, we do, in fact, defeat Drawfish Geary. If you guys did enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you again so much to Panda for the original idea. If you guys have any other crazy concepts, please leave them in the comments down below. I've learned over time that you guys usually have way better ideas than I do, so leave them down below. I'm happy to shout you guys out and do them in the next video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.